Welcome to this week's Insights with Eric Hacopian. This week, we're going to be studying the latest announcement by the ruling coalition that they will not be holding snap parliamentary elections this year. The reasons given by them for this decision is the collapse of the 16 opposition parties and a lack of demand for such elections. We need to understand the constitutional backgrounds to this decision. Given the changes that were made in our constitution during the regime of Sarkisyan, the new parliamentary system that we have in Armenia is in essence a 5-year dictatorship in which if the ruling party, there's a party that has a 50+% majority, they can essentially rule for 5 years until the next elections without any reason to call any snap elections. However, this decision, no matter how politically expedient it is for the current government, is really not in the interest of the country. Let's look at why that is so. This government, given the failures of the war, needs a new mandate. The mandate that it won in December of 2018 no longer exists. It is very clear that this government does not have support of 70% of the people, which were the election results back from December of 2018. Secondly, given the crisis that we're facing in this country, we need a broader coalition as part of this government if it is going to stay. So it is vital on them to bring in people, technocrats, experts, to broaden their coalition and have a more competent government that can win the trust of people. At the same time, while it is true that the street opposition has collapsed and really plays no role anymore, that does not mean that there are not large segments of the Armenian population that oppose the incompetence of the current government and the corruption of the old one. My question for the ruling party is this. If you have decided not to hold snap elections, one, what are you willing to do to expand your base of government by bringing new people and new faces that are more competent and are more reflective of the views of more people in this country? Two, what plans do you have to reform the military? Because if you have such reforms, we have not heard about them. Three, what are your plans to create islands of excellence and improving our state structure? Four, what is your vision for the foreign policy of Armenia? Which direction are we going to? And do you have competent people running that foreign policy? The first statement by the newly appointed foreign minister after the failures of the war was that the results of the war was a military failure and not a diplomatic failure. I'm hoping he really doesn't believe that, because if that's what he really believes, he knows very little, and the very little that he does know is wrong. If you don't have competent answers to any of these questions, it's time for you to step out of the way, call snap elections, and allow the country to move in a new direction. My comments and questions for the 16-party opposition are the following. You have failed in gaining any popular support in your efforts to remove the current government. The reasons for your failure are simple. People do not trust you and do not expect you to be able to bring about the change that you're promising. The choice from the perspective of the average voter for the last few months has been the following. An inept government that is not corrupt, which is the current government, or an inept government that is corrupt, which was the choice that you were offering. The reasons for your failure is further compounded by the fact that for the last 3 months, you have not given any agenda or a single new idea of how would you deal with the crisis of the country. Yelling traitor 75 million times does not constitute a political program that people are going to get behind. If you love your country, which I'm sure you do, it's time for you to exit stage left and allow a new opposition that is not tied to the old regime to become the main challenger to the current government that has failed on so many things. On a final note, all this talk about this government, that government, new regime, old regime, really takes us away from what's really important. Because ultimately, as we know, governments come and go, but 95% of the bureaucracy stays the same. What we have in Armenia is a far greater failure than this current regime or the old regime. It's really about straight structures that have failed us, and this was very reflective of everything that happened in the war. What we all need to be focused on is actually creating competent state structures. And the 3 places that we need to start, given the crisis that we're in, is in the field of military reform, foreign policy, and economic development. Changing the country structurally in its governance structure is far more important and in the long run far more relevant than who rules today or which government is going to take over in 6 months. This is your host, Eric Hacopian, and thank you for joining us this week.